and welcome to the League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism, where we attempt to apply logic and reason to religion and politics. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Christy Santiago.
Hello, Christy.
And we're here with a special guest, the Kavanaugh, Connor.
Kavernacle.
Kavernacle, yeah. Kavanagh. That's fine. Kavanagh is my second name, but yeah, it links in with my YouTube name. But yeah, hi everyone.
It works.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so excited about our guest tonight, you guys. There's so many topics I want to talk about with this human right here. So I'm just stoked. I'm so stoked that it's Friday night, and I love doing this, but tonight's extra special for me.
Yeah,
so.
And I'm happy to be here as well. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay! Hi, everybody in the chat. I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. Okay, I did want to start real quick with Happy Humanist Day.
Is that today?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's today for us still, but I think it's over for you and Nacha.
Yeah.
You guys live in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I probably should have known that before, but yeah, Happy Humanist Day, everyone.
Yay! Oh, goodness. Okay.
Awesome stuff. So, to kind of kick us off, I guess, real quick, Kavernacle, can you tell us about your channel and what you do there?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is I've been doing it for about 2 years, pretty seriously for maybe 1 year. Just a small, I guess people call it leftist channel, just talking about various things, mainly focus on US politics, but not really restricted to it. Sometimes talk about political theories. The moment I'm sort of covering, the stuff of Iran. I'm doing more in-depth videos. I just did one on Ben Shapiro and like Judeo-Christian values and things like that. My upcoming one is about the right-wing defense of racism against Islam. So just broad political topics if anyone fancies checking it out after the podcast. But yeah, cover most things that is, important. And you might learn something about maybe history or even British politics. So I sometimes do that as well.
You do. This last one you just did on Shapiro, I wasn't even 10 minutes in when I sent it to my dad. I sent it to everyone. I was like, I don't even know how this is going to end, but this far into it, I know everyone needs to see these 10 minutes. So if it keeps, no matter what you did after that, it would have been fine. So good and so important.
No, thanks a lot for sharing it. Like, I don't know how your family will take it, but I so appreciate it.
Yes, well, my dad is very, very liberal. He is a Democrat.
Oh, okay, that's good.
He didn't raise me, and him and I align so politically almost identical. There's a few. Yeah. I mean, he's a generation older than me. He's in the boomer. But my mom is very conservative, not Trump supporting conservative, but
okay.
Normal conservative. I don't know how to explain that. America's a very right. Even though when you look at the numbers, it's under 30% of the country that is conservative. Yeah. But 27 to 30% of the country are 100% politically active. They always vote. They always, and I do know for a fact that comes with the privilege of not having to work 3 jobs. A single mom who has to take the bus to school on a Tuesday when we have a vote. We don't have a national holiday for voting. So if Tuesday's the voting day and in her state there's no early voting, she has to take the bus to school or to work, has kids, she has to cook dinner. She's not going to vote. It's just not happen. How? And then throw in rain or snow or whatever else might be. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's very unfortunate. I think that kind of is right in the middle of the imperialism soup. Like that's part. Maybe it wasn't planned that way, but once it started to be that way, it was like, check. Well, this is that the way it is.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's good that Bernie is saying that it should be a national holiday so everyone can go do it. And it should be like a common sense issue where of course everyone can support having the day off to vote, Republicans and Democrats, but somehow it's only a tiny margin of Democrats support it. And, it's not really being talked about on the rest of the spectrum, which is frustrating. And, maybe playing into what you're saying about controlling who votes, really.
Yes. You know, I get infuriated when I see memes that say if voting changes anything, they wouldn't let you do it.
Yeah.
I could see falling for that because you're like, oh, but if voting didn't matter, they wouldn't be so obstructive. Like, it's so important. It is the one time of the whole time, like every 2 years, that everybody has the same exact amount of power.
Yeah, well, if it wasn't so important, the Republicans wouldn't constantly gerrymander to make sure African Americans can't vote because they know they're going to vote for Democrats, most of them. Or what was that politician Trump had that they're going to investigate voter fraud, but it was just a front for voter suppression.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
They shut that down.
Yeah,
the whole thing
which is
shut down.
Which is good. But
they
of course, you know,
34 cases. They went back decades. And of those 34 cases, 32 of them were white people who just voted once by mail and went. Like, they were like, oh, crap, I forgot. That's our voter fraud.
I know.
Yes. I think that the thumbprint voting, like Venezuela has, is brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. And I don't understand why America, the best nation in the world, wouldn't have the best voting system in the world. I get why they don't.
Yeah, I read about there's lobbies for the electronic voting machines. So even that plays into it. Like, you have lobbies for these weird machines because in England we just have paper and you just you cross in a box because obviously it's harder to tamper with paper than it is with electronic things, which been proven that votes have been switched and everything. So they're open to hacking. And I think I read a story about a 17-year-old hacking a voting machine. Like, he just, to prove a point, he hacked one just to show how easy it was. Yeah. Which is crazy.
And with that particular story, people got behind him to lobby for more protections, and they were completely just like, they took the bill and were like, not right now. Not right now. Or they're not interested. Mitch McConnell has come on and said he is not interested in it. Israeli owning our voting machines in many areas in our country is fine with him. Yeah. There's so much work to do.
Well, no one's ever going to hack it for Democrats, let's be honest. If it's a foreign power, like the Israelis or Saudis, they'd never hack it to switch to Democrat. They always hack it to switch Republican.
Of course.
Yeah.
But, according to Trump, the Russians wanted Hillary. I can't even say it with a straight face. According to Trump, the Russians wanted her because she'd be nicer to them. Gives me a headache. My eyes start.
I was reading through the news yesterday on Reddit, and I was like, it was American news. I was like, every story I read is so infuriating. I just want to get it out of my brain, and this isn't even my country. I can't imagine what you guys feel like when you're really reading these stories and thinking what is happening to my country right in front of me.
Yes,
exactly.
It will be an all-night thing. He'll send something to me, and I'm like, motherfucker, and then I'll say, but watch this, and he reads it and oh, we've really got to talk about this, and there's just, it never ends. Sometimes it's so much that you just sit back well, I'm a person. I'm just this is a group of people. I mean, we have in this country Koch brothers, and not just them. There's people on the left and the right, but they're so wealthy that they create and fund think tanks that send out feelers to see how people are feeling and then actually use social media to change that or enforce things. How does a person who does a once a week thing on YouTube have a chance? I don't. But all of us together do.
Yeah.
So
hopefully.
That's the silver lining, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to be like, listen, pay attention. But they don't. We have, out of all of the democracies on this planet, America has the lowest voter turnout.
Really? That's crazy.
Out of all of less than 50.
Oh no, Christy. I can't finish your sentence either.
I'll finish it. Less than 50% turnout for American votes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think in our last election, we had about 30% I think I heard.
God. so little. I think for the Brexit one is on our highest. I think it's 70, maybe not 75, but 70 plus. It was a lot of people for, that sort of thing. And I think it's shown, like I think Christy was saying, you want less people to vote when, the one party who would, I wouldn't say Democrats are good, but will actually do anything, are the ones that are never going to get voted by, like, if you're going to make all these people, especially people who, for example, African Americans, you don't want more of them to vote. You don't want more people to vote because you're scared that they'll actually vote for someone that will represent their interests. So, someone like the Republicans, like, what amazes me about Americans is that Republicans, it's like they don't even pretend like to fight for any sort of working people. Oh, Christy's back.
Yay!
We tried to carry on your talking point.
Well, I'm sure you guys did lovely.
All right, and we're all set back up the right way too, so we're okay.
Yeah, hey, look at that.
Next notch.
I don't know what happened. It was the deep state.
Yeah, trying to suppress us.
Cracked me up, yes.
Yeah.
So, have you been paying attention to this lovely little game that our Warhawks are playing with Iran?
Yeah, definitely. I think I made two videos on it recently, so
I mean, I've seen them, but maybe the other people haven't.
No, even if you hadn't, it's fine. But yeah, it's something. I don't know if you wanna start off by your opinion, because I made videos on it, so I can expand off what you're saying if you want to start it off.
I am 100% with Tulsi Gabbard on this one.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. None of it adds up. You're insulting our intelligence. If Japan, who has no dog in the game, like they have no reason to say anything except for, hey, we saw things coming from the sky.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who I distrust. It matters that all of these parts fit together for a story, and none of them do.
Yeah.
But I do know Michael Bolton's story. And I do know these guys. I know because I've studied them. I've studied them for a while. And it looks like they opened up their 1980s, death squads and went and said, we'll do this. It's identical. So it's scary. Iran is an ancient civilization. And it doesn't matter that I don't care with their ideology. It's not my country. Yeah. I do care for the people there. Of course I do. I think that all humans, I think that there should be democracies everywhere and everybody's life should be valued. However, that is a utopia. And so we live in the world we have right now. And the world we have right now is filled with these warmongers who foresee going into Iran and putting in place another person like they had before, where they can send in BP from British, and they can all these oil companies can just nom 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 nom, and eat all this stuff up and fuck the Iranians is how they feel. And I'm if anybody wants to go back and look at when they were trying to sell the Iraq war, go to any news, 5 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, you will never see someone on network news talking bad about it. Never. It just was not going to happen.
They kicked everyone off the air.
To see that now. I mean, we see that. It might just be a person here and a person there, but it's actually on the news. Bernie's saying no. Tulsi's saying no. The wishy-washy fuckers are like, I need more evidence. But that's still better than, light them up, Jimmy. So. Yeah,
exactly. So I could go into a lot about Iran. I don't know where to start. Well, I think I'll start. So I guess one thing that people need to know is that the reason the US never learned its lesson from Vietnam is because they sort of thought guerrilla warfare was a fad. So under Reagan, they didn't change the way the army fought. But when they had success in like Grenada, Panama, and in the Gulf War, they thought, we're still the best. America's still the best army. And then they still didn't change. And then they have two massive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And look what happens. The exact same thing as in Vietnam. Taliban it reminds me just of North Vietnam. Like you think you're beating them at one stage, but then they're back, and then eventually when America leaves, the Taliban are probably going to take over again. So in terms of Iran, like what people don't realize, Iran fought Iraq in the 80s, and Iraq were one of the most powerful armies at the time in that region. And Iran held out for like 8 years, had 1 million casualties, and they fought like it was in World War One. They sustained so much pressure, and it was a brand new government as well, obviously the Islamic Republic. And people think they're going to be a pushover, like America just going to roll in there with Israel and the Saudis and take them over. Not to mention, I was watching some good stuff, I think on Russia Today, some former Pentagon guy saying about there's a lot of Shia militias in Iraq that have pledged allegiance to the Ayatollah. You're really opening up the whole region for some sort of sectarian conflict again, like the Iraq War, which obviously none of us want. And in terms of Iran, like someone was saying to me, Iran's a terrorist state, Iran's bad. Iran supports less terrorist organizations than the US has. The main ones of Iran are Hezbollah, which obviously Iran helped create in Lebanon, and obviously they have actual serious grievances because the Israeli government, the way they've expanded their territory in places like Lebanon, had a war with Lebanon only 12 years ago. And then sometimes support Hamas as well, but that's a bit more frosty because of the religious differences, because one's Sunni, one's Shia. And then obviously they support people like Assad. They support, like I'm saying, the Iraqi government as well, are pretty in bed with Iran. But in terms of like threats to America or the West, really no threat at all. What the problem is the UK, the USA, Saudi Arabia and Israel, they have their eyes set on, like you're saying, imperialist reasons. They're set on making Iran a free capitalist democracy again, or a sham democracy probably. There's lots of oil in Iran, which they haven't, hasn't been exploited. And the only people who probably would exploit it is a foreign nation, would be Russia or China. And, you can easily see where the interests are, where Saudi Arabia sees Iran, most powerful rival in the region. Iran is more powerful than Saudi Arabia, and that is a problem for them. And Iran is actually, one thing I'll say about Iran, despite it being, Islamic Republic, there's lots of problems with it. The people in Iran actually do have some sort of say in the way their government is run, which you cannot say the same for the Saudis or the Gulf states. And what the big problem for them is in the ideological battle for Islam is that there's nowhere in the Quran that it says you should be ruled by monarchies. And the mullahs always point that out, saying, look at our system. It's a blend of Islam and democracy. Yours is just an Islamic autocratic state. And that is a problem for them because it challenges the legitimacy of the Saudi government, because they're like, look at this. You have priests and people working together for the government rather than just one family that have been in charge since the 30s. Yeah, and they'll crucify any people who dissent against the government. So if like people like us, you can see it more clearly. But I think for the average person, getting into the nuances of revolutionary Islam versus conservative Islam, and the relationship between Israel and Iran or Saudi Arabia and the alliance with America, it's quite hard to understand. And on the surface, because of the recent history, Iran doesn't look too great because it's funded some terrorist organizations. It has done some terrorist acts, like they killed the Israeli Olympic team in Munich. They was at the British embassy somewhere else as well. So they have done stuff. But if people don't learn the history of America, drone striking weddings in Yemen, or even funding the Saudi conflict.
Right.
Yeah, it's so much worse. So
hospitals, big, huge areas where these just poverty-stricken villages store their grain, gone. That's unacceptable. I mean, it breaks my heart. I want to scream. Like, don't you guys see this? Yeah, it really pisses me off. And it's not black and white. Nothing about Iran and this whole thing is black and white. Nobody's perfect. But you're right, hammer right on the nail with the Saudi. They have a problem with Iran flourishing. They have this same exact problem with Iran flourishing that the American right-wing government have with socialism flourishing.
Yeah.
Like, they cannot let people see that social programs help the average person, that helping kids not to be in debt to get an education helps the country. They cannot let that happen, because if they let the average person see the fruits of that, there's nothing that will stop them from voting for it. And it's the same with Saudi Arabia. If anybody in that nation starts seeing, well, wow, they have this, and women can actually go do things. They have fashion shows. I'm not really into, I'm a cosmetologist. I do hair. I've done hair for a long time, so I am girly. But I spend most of my time researching and history. So it was rare that I kind of fell into the melding of both of the things that I do.
Yeah.
There's this huge, it's like a 3-part series, an hour and a half each, of how these very, very ambitious men and women in Iran wanted to have fashion shows. That's not ever happened. You know, you can only show what you can show, and it should be not flashy. But they felt differently. The millennials felt differently. They wanted to be individuals, and so they really worked hard, and they just had their 3rd annual fashion show. And it is, their risque, of course, is nothing like ours. It's not like, you know, the angels at Victoria's Secret. But it was wonderful to see. And to know that Iran has a lot of work to do. So do we. So no glass houses and stones and all that. But to know that there are young people who are fighting the system, who are doing what they can to help democracy grow in a nation like Iran. And then there's a nation like Saudi Arabia who knowingly beheads people, who crucifies people. Recently, 2 weeks ago, they crucified another person.
Yeah.
And we're friends with them, but not Iran. And it just infuriates me. It makes me so mad because I can't be the only one that sees this. And if I am, well, then we have a lot more work to do than I thought. And like I said, I feel so small when I take that in. And then I find people like you, and I'm like, he's not even here, and he sees, and I love it. And so if he sees there, that just shows me that a person from another country will get a better American education than an American.
I think a lot of it is because I think British people, it's not like we hate America, but we kind of don't like America. Like, it's like, if you ask average person, like, what's average British person like, what's an American like, or do you like Americans? They're like, yeah, we do like them. They're just a bit loudness, to overconfident and stuff. But I think also what is interesting about England as well is that, you know, we're okay with America. We were okay with America because you were the successors to the British Empire in essence, because although people like FDR kind of wanted Britain to give away all our colonies, and same with France, someone like Harry Truman came in and helped us prop them up again. And then what America does, instead of direct control, it was neo-colonialism, such as with the IMF, World Bank, set up free market democracies where they can expand their influence. So a country like Japan is a perfect example, literally designed the whole country's democracy around the US system, literally wrote the constitution of Japan after the war and set it up like a US market. And of course, even that backfired, because in the 1980s, you see films like Blade Runner, these like sort of racist depictions of Japanese people taking over America because the industries that they helped set up, the Americans, had become so successful in Japan. But it's just, I find it interesting in Britain. I guess we kind of see that for what it is in some terms, but also I think in Britain, we also like to blame the Americans. So the Iran stuff, the original people who were messing with Iran was the British. It wasn't the Americans. We've been messing with them since, you know, before the turn of the 20th century for their like tobacco, for their oil. And then with your help, and it was mainly us who did it. It was with your help, though, we overthrew the democratically elected government and installed the Shah as an absolute monarch. But, you know, I think with Britain, it can be a bit easy because I'm not like full British. I'm half English, half Irish. So I got more context to that as well. Yeah, but I think you kind of see for America for what it is, but at the same time, I think we do have a problem that we don't recognize our own history a lot of the time. So it's easy to blame America for Iran and blame America for Israel. But, you know, who helped Israel? The first people to help Israel was us, the Balfour Declaration during the First World War. That was the British. Then obviously the Americans came in, and basically what happened is the Americans just helped us with everything we already started. And I think that's why people like Churchill just didn't mind Americans taking over all this stuff for us. It wasn't obviously like a completely like, you know, intertwined relationship. We obviously don't always get on because the Suez crisis, we were working with Israel and France, and the US didn't want any business of it. But it's just interesting how these white, you know, America's empire is actually a nice progression of the British Empire, but because you're white Christians as well, we just didn't mind at all. But stuff with, you know, Iran, you know, I don't want to on this podcast paint Iran as like some super rosy place to live. It's probably one of the worst places to live in terms of the amount of executions they do. For women's rights, you have to always cover up. Right. Secret police and stuff. It's not a great place to live. But I think what the difference is when you've got the lesser of two evils, you can clearly see Saudi Arabia is worse than Iran. And the fact that you're saying we're backing that one against Iran because Iran rejected Western-style capitalism in 1979. Well, broadly in 1979, but consolidated by the Islamic faction in 1979 later. But just because they rejected this system, just like other countries, we label them a rogue state. And instead of trying to help them and get rid of the elements that hate America by what Trump's doing and what the Americans are doing, it just makes the hardliners and the Islamists in Iran seem like they were always right about America, and it's just going to make them more powerful.
Yes, we're fulfilling all of that for them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just what they wanted.
I'm sure you do, but Armin Navabi, Atheist Republic?
No, I actually don't. So if you want to...
The largest online atheist community on the planet. It's Armin Navabi wrote a... Do I even have his book right here? Oh, I see it. I can't reach it. It's called Why There Are No Gods. He's a friend of mine, and I mod for his channel on Saturday evenings. It goes live every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Well, his story is unique. He was born to an Iranian family in Iran, very Muslim area, but his family were very secular. They were the American Christian that, Christmas we go to church, Easter we go to church, and we call ourselves Christians because we want to be known as good people. That's how his family, but they were very into education. His mom was a nurse. And there are pictures of his mother before the Shah was put in her nurse gear, her hair showing, bikinis at the beach, short shorts, regular 70s attire for women.
Yeah.
Then after, completely covered, with black, and they made it out. They made it to Canada. He lives in Canada. He's got an amazing website. He's doing a lot of really good stuff. He was, you might have seen this, walking around Canadian Pride last year with the sign "Allah is gay."
Yeah, I saw that picture.
That's him. So, and
cool.
he's a straight man. He's just he's an activist. Well, being from Iran and his family being so involved with that, having to get out because you went from women being just like the men as far as the 1970s could go, that the leader then was a democratically elected leader who wanted to nationalize the oil and wanted to get off the petrodollar. Well, yeah, it's the way religion, we can't even talk about Iran or any of this without religion. If it wasn't for their thinking my magical sky dad is better than yours, and so we have to go to war. And I know that's belittling it, and a lot of people think you shouldn't say that, but I think that the group that we have here, they know that I would never belittle someone. I don't think that Christianity or religion is a mental illness, but I do think that it's my dick is bigger than your dick, but it has to do with a God, Poor Armin. To get back to him, when he was young, he was told that he needed to pray so many times a day, and that his parents weren't, so he got scared that his parents were going to go to hell. And so he talked to his imam or whoever it was, I'm just paraphrasing, and they said, well, you can pray for them. You can do extra prayers for them, but because it was his mom and his dad, it was more than he could even attain, more than he could do. And he realized that the age of reason was coming, age 14, 15, 16 for Muslim boys. Of course, it's a lot younger for girls, of course. But he knew that if he died before that age, at least he would go to heaven. And this poor young child jumped out of a 5-story window to kill himself so he wouldn't go to hell. It's just
crazy.
So that's, even though that's a small little one-person story, that's the kind of ideology we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, just I obviously agree with what you're saying in terms of religion, but I think religion plays a part in the Iran stuff, but I think it can also be looked at in a lot of ways without looking at the doctrine a lot of the time. So, George Bush called the Iraq War like a crusade, so that evokes images of obviously like Christianity versus Islam. And I think there's a lot of people in the neocons who think that sort of stuff, and it's more like our system is better, Western, Judeo-Christian. It's like I was saying in my video, Judeo-Christian values are better. Let's give the system to Iran, for example. But I think it also a lot of it just goes from power dynamics in the region. So Saudi Arabia and Iran might clash anyway, even if they're the same religion, because it's just two different systems, butting heads of each other, and they're right next to each other. The Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf are right there, but they're right next to each other in terms of that. And with things like Israel also see Iran as a threat, because Iran is probably one of the only countries that could challenge Israel in a military conflict. In terms of we know Israel would obviously win, but it's not going to be a pushover like the Arabs were in 1973 and 1967. So in terms of like the religious stuff, obviously there's the whole Jews versus Muslims and Christians versus Muslims, but I think it can also be put down to a lot of time, like you're saying, imperialism and just a regional conflict. Who's going to become the most powerful? Israel wants to get rid of Assad. Wants to get rid of the Ayatollah because they really oppose him, and it's a threat because also you get countries like Russia coming into places like Syria. It's just a problem for Israel. And I think what is troubling about the Trump administration, despite him saying all this stuff about Saudi Arabia before he got in, he's probably the president who's been most in bed with the Saudis and the Israelis probably ever, because his son-in-law Jared Kushner his family owned properties in the West Bank. Going over. Didn't they they passed a law saying you can't sell weapons to the Saudis anymore for this Yemen stuff, and then he said he's going to veto it. So he's going to veto this sort of thing just to sell them more weapons. How is that allowed? And obviously they don't have the power to overrule his veto, but it's just crazy. Scary. And the stuff about the Golan Heights, a village being named after Trump because he's emboldened the Israelis to take more territory. It's crazy.
Yes, what is it? It's Trump something.
I don't know if it's maybe Trump height.
Trump village.
I would look it up, correct.
Stolen land. And Bibi Netanyahu gets up there and says, because of this great leader and blah, blah, blah. And then they pull this curtain off of it and it's Trump village.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
Sounds like a nightmare place to live.
It just suits Trump to have stolen land taken from people with violence included. Just pure entitlement, just that icky, dripping with grossness entitlement that you see from his daughter, him, Jared, all of them. They are so close to Saudis. And I think if that doesn't scare you as an American citizen, I really don't know what would, because would you rather, that game, would you rather, if you were Syrian, live under Assad or underneath ISIS?
Yeah.
Assad all day, all day.
I have another one for you.
Okay.
Would you rather side with Russia or Saudi Arabia? Because
exactly.
Shut the fuck up about how he's colluding with Russia. He's obviously not.
Yeah.
I
think governments collude with other governments all the time, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that because it's never going to stop. I think that it needs to be done very transparently. Yeah. That would make all the difference. Times, places, what was said, the American people get to see. I understand top secret. I understand that certain things are of national security and should be redacted. I'm not a ding dong. However, the agenda and what the people want, and not just what the people want, if what you're deciding to do is in the interest of you or just a small few and is it not good for the rest, I think it's a no-go. And unfortunately, that it's the opposite of that is what's going on right now. With Trump, I don't know if either of you saw he just had a rally, his kickoff to 2020. I'm watching it with he always makes me want to throw up in my mouth, but he's so bad. But I feel like if I don't watch it, like I'm going to be one of those people that say, oh, it was stupid. I know it's stupid. I don't have to watch it, but it was worse than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if either of you have seen any of it. He goes on and on. They did the lock her up bit. They did it. It was like Twilight Zone.
Because he's still running against Hillary.
Right. No, he is. He is. And then he went on to say, the Democrats want to take your health care away. The Democrats want to take Social Security away. I won't let that be. And they're just like, woo!
Yeah. So, on that, can we get your thoughts on single-payer healthcare and like medical care for all? So, like, we hear it from someone out of the country
that has medical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
tell us how bad it is. Tell us how bad you're suffering. Please tell us how
all the lines you have to wait in.
Yeah. All the lines.
So the main problem with the UK healthcare system at the moment is not because it's a flawed idea. It's more that the right wing, we've had a right wing government for the last 9 years, and they've been cutting funding for it across that last 9 years. While, obviously immigration has increased and people relying on this healthcare service, people getting older as well, so people living longer. So you have more, of a burden on the NHS while they're cutting funding for it. So obviously that's not really helping things. But in terms of like the history of it, so basically after World War II, obviously Britain is a different context to America in terms of the whole country was absolutely devastated. 400,000 people dead, pretty much the same number as America, but obviously the country's a lot smaller. Obviously a lot of our civilians were killed as well because we had bombings in the 40s, 1940 and then 1944 and 45 with the V rockets. So a lot of people died, and the country was really, really poor because it literally gave everything just to survive. So it's a lot different to America, where they transitioned to a war economy, and then it made them boom. We literally just trying to survive in this war. And what happened is, when people don't actually know this, because Trump likes to talk about Churchill. Winston Churchill was voted out before the end of the war. So we talk about this great wartime leader and stuff. People were sick of him. People, he's not a popular prime minister. He did get re-elected after the war in the 50s. But, people were sick of him, and they knew you needed a Labour socialist government to reform the country. So what came in was Clement Attlee and his Labour government, socialist government, passed many, many different reforms. One of them was creating the NHS. And basically what the principle was, no one in this country, after what we've been through, should die from not having healthcare. So there we go. Everyone pays into this system through tax. And there's also a special tax as well. I forgot what it's called, national insurance, I think. So we both, I'm sure Michael in the chat is British, so if you can correct me if I get anything wrong. And basically what happens is everyone is on it, and you can also have private insurance. So some of the jobs I've been applying for and stuff, they're like, you also get private coverage. It might be a bit better, but it's like a perk with your job. It's not something you have to pay for, not health insurance. So it just comes out of your taxes and the special tax for it. So generally I can walk in to a hospital right now if I want to. There's a local one. And they'll treat me if I have something wrong with me, whether I've been in a car crash, I've hurt my leg or something. Depending on how serious your injury is, you might have to wait a while. So I remember I was playing football, so soccer for you Americans, but I sprained my hand and I thought I broke it. So I went to A&E and I waited. This doesn't sound great. I waited 3 hours, got it, an X-ray, and they said, you sprained it. Here's a little support thing, and I just walked out, and that's it. No bill, no anything, because obviously our taxes should cover this system. So if that wait is longer and you can't get it as quick as you want, or if you're booking things like, I know people saying the mental health services are really suffering at the moment, it's hard to find a therapist and stuff. I understand that, but at the same time, it's not because the system is broken. We don't have, you guys have 30,000 people a year dying from no health insurance. We don't have anything. 40,000. Yeah, we don't have. Yeah. So I guess if you divide that by a certain number of, what our population is, we don't have anything close to that really, because anyone can go in and get healthcare. But it's just, the problems are people getting older, immigrants, I guess coming in, but that's not really a big deal. It's more about the cutting of the funding, because a lot of immigrants from Africa and from Europe make up the nurses and the doctors. There's most of the NHS doctors I've ever had are from India. So, the fear mongering about immigrants putting the strand in the NHS isn't really based in real facts, because of course more people put a strain on it, but these people help so much of it. It's more about, you fund it more to accommodate the growing population rather than demonize a group of people coming over. But yeah, that's it. So never paid for healthcare. Hopefully I never will. And that's why the stuff, Boris Johnson probably going to become prime minister, and Trump saying the NHS is on the table. I think the government that passed that, there would be like we saw the protest against Trump the first time.
Yeah, it would be massive.
And the protest against the Iraq War was 2 million people. If someone tried to get rid of the NHS, I think you'd probably see one of the biggest protests in Western history. I think it'd be crazy protests here. I'd be the first time I'd think like a government could like properly be overthrown is if it did something like that. So I don't think anyone would do suicide in the open like that, political suicide. But I could see, obviously Boris Johnson's going to be prime minister, more cuts to the NHS. When they can make the argument, look, this system is broken because of socialism. Let's change it to an American model.
Because they broke it. It's the same thing here. Yeah. I mean, we don't have universal health care, but we had a right-wing medical program, the ACA, and, they cut off this funding, and then they stopped this funding, and then they don't fund this for the next thing. What happens is the system doesn't work because you effing broke it.
Yeah.
That's their game plan every single time. It is frustrating. It is frustrating for sure.
You made a really important point that I want to make again.
Okay.
Sure.
is because you said that you have more immigrants coming in, you have people living longer, and you have people getting old. So you have more of a healthcare need, but they're cutting the funding. So of course it's going to be broken. And I'm really repeating it because here it is brought up so often. Like if you mention national healthcare at all here to almost anyone, especially in like my area, I live in Ohio. Well, Europe isn't doing very well with it, right? So it's good to point out. Well, one, they're doing better than us. Two, it's because they're defunding it and getting more people who need it at the same time. So that's why.
Exactly.
And then three. I forgot the third point.
It was a good one. I know it. It was the best one.
No. Three is how you're going to pay for it.
Right.
What I've been telling people recently is like, I don't know, cut our military spending in half and still spend more than any other nation in the world. And we can take care of that and free college and probably a whole lot of other fucking stuff. Like we can take care of so much.
What's so crazy to me in America is that in the UK we have less examples of like massive spending bloats. Like we obviously do, but it's not like I can point to something on the top of my head and be like I could say, for example, we could get rid of our nuclear deterrent, the Trident submarines, but that's a bit more controversial because we're a small country and we don't have a great army. So we kind of, if a country like Russia starts bullying us, it's kind of, you might need something like that. So it's not like that, but in America, it's like you literally gave the biggest tax cut of all time to the top 0.01%, and you're telling people you can't afford universal healthcare, which Britain could afford in 1948 after it'd been devastated by 6 years of war.
Russia could afford.
Well, Cuba has it as well, and it's apparently pretty good in Cuba.
Yes, Tom Hart, one of my favorite authors, political guy. He has a show Monday through Friday. Tom Hartman. Him and his wife went to Cuba, and he said no matter where he went, every Cuban had the most beautiful smile. Didn't matter if they were homeless. They had the most beautiful white smile because dentistry is covered. Everything's covered. And if people want to, be mean to Cuba in any way, just know that if you get lung cancer, that treatment that is going to save your life came from Cuba.
Yeah.
PrEP and all these new drugs for AIDS and stopping the spread of it, Cuba.
Yeah.
So, Cuba.
Well, to tie it back to your point on imperialism, we like to say how socialism doesn't work and how bad Cuba is. Cuba's revolution was started because America basically promised the Cubans independence after the Spanish-American War, didn't give it to them, treated it like a colony, back the brutal dictator, let the Italian mafia run riot on Cuba, and then some people react and kill the people responsible, and then America's reaction is, let's put a massive embargo on Cuba that still exists today from 1959. What have they ever done to America? Nothing. And then they get all funny with Cubans all the time. Like, it's just crazy to me. What's wrong with American conservatism and patriotism is that you can do this to a country and then still blame them for being bad or not liking you. Like, same with Iran. It's like, if they topple the dictator you've backed and has been killing them, you can't complain when they don't exactly want to be best friends with you. But Cuba actually did want to be friends with the US because it's where the sugar was sold. So they cut off like a vital supply line. And then, of course, the Soviets came in and were like, well, we'll buy it, and then we can set up bases in Cuba. And then the US was like, oh, no one can do that. Not near us. But, the Soviet Union will put our missiles in Turkey. So it's just like, like it all ties in together. Like, Cuba is demonized and it's still doing, not amazing. It's a pretty poor country, but it's doing, the best it can under an economic embargo from the most powerful country in the whole world. So
yeah, and I follow them because I am so inspired by the Cuban political system right now. I mean, they just rewrote their constitution. This isn't even a blip. This isn't mentioned on any mainstream media, on any I call it corporate media, because that's exactly what it is. If Boeing sponsors your news show, I don't want your news. Yeah. So, but they spent the last 18 months before they, finished and wrote their constitution, the 18 months prior to it, every single person was involved. They would meet in schoolhouses and courthouses and churches, at the beach and people's houses. And they would have a list of referendums that people wrote in that they wanted on them. And they would talk about them, they'd discuss them, they'd debate them, and they would choose as a community what rules they wanted in their constitution. They want to be a socialist economic system. That's what they want. And so that's what they chose as a people. This is not even talked about here. I haven't talked about it with Mac. I haven't talked about it because there's so many other things going on, and it really should be talked about. People really should see this accomplishment that the people of Cuba have done. Yeah. I mean, bravo, Cuba. I'm so proud of them. And just as they finish that constitution and get it in writing, Trump says more sanctions. Because the American people cannot find out about this, and they won't. None of it's been talked about. My girlfriend is Cuban. Her family is from Cuba. Her dad is 100% Cuban, and they are like most Cubans that move to the States. Not all. # not all. But they live in Miami, and they're very conservative. Fox News day in, day out on every TV in every room in their house. Coffee mugs, Trump, if you come to America, you speak English and blah, blah, blah. I mean, just copying the rhetoric that they hear. And it's very sad that they don't realize the people they come from are revolutionary. They are beautiful. I just love that they've done so much with so little, that the nation above them is just this dark cloud pressuring them, and they've still thrived. They've still managed to thrive. Yeah.
Well, with a lot of stuff like that, I guess sometimes, I get what you're saying, and Cuba is like a good example, and I think Vietnam is another one. But I was watching the Ken. I think it is important to make a point that history is more like shades of grey. So I was watching I just finished the Ken Burns documentary on Vietnam, and it's interesting throughout the whole thing. They've got a South Vietnamese civilian who was quite well off, who had to flee North Vietnam, then flee South Vietnam. She moved to America. Yes. And it's interesting because she's a kid, but, obviously the North Vietnamese revolutionaries saw her dad as a target for killing because, he's an elite, he's in bed with the French and the Americans. Mm-hmm. But I think, with the Cubans as well, their hatred, and obviously the hatred of the communists, the new generation of Cubans, I can sort of understand it because to them it's just like, I've had to flee my home because the communists chased out my parents. But, I guess it's, we can't really imagine, like, you have to divorce yourself from that thinking, because we can say, like, well, the communists might have chased out some innocent people, But in general, they were doing the right thing because most people were being exploited by, the US-backed dictator. And, I'm sorry you had to flee Cuba because they might have killed your family and your parents for revenge and stuff. But yeah, at the same time, like you're saying, it is probably a better system. And it's ironic that they support someone like Trump who's just damaging Cuba for literally no reason. Like, the same thing with Vietnam. When Vietnam got taken over the communists, the US put sanctions on it for 20 years. Like, why? Yes. What? Just out of petty revenge that they stood up to you. 100%. The same with the Cubans.
Yes.
But it's crazy. It's like the US is like I was saying, the difference between the British Empire and the US is it's more like economic power. It's like, if you don't join our system, we're going to make it as hard as possible for you to actually have a functioning society without us. So Iran, North Korea is not a great example, but it's still there. Vietnam at a time, and obviously like there's some other countries, Venezuela, and Libya and Syria. Well, Libya back in the day, like in the 90s, and Syria and Iraq as well. So it's just it's frustrating. But like you're saying, the rich and powerful control all these outlets, corporate news. I did my master's thesis on the New York Times and the Gulf War, and what I said is, the American people don't really want nuance. They literally said Saddam Hussein is Hitler. He's Hitler. Like, he's literally the second coming of Hitler. And then one reporter was like, well, he's much more like Nasser from Egypt in the 50s than someone like Hitler, because Arab socialist. What he wants is getting rid of Israel. It's kind of like a throwback to that sort of time. But then the New York Times like Hitler, war. And it's just like, well, obviously it's all intertwined, because the people, it is brainwashing in a way, because if you have an uneducated electorate as well, or someone with super biased, political leanings, like I'm going to be Republican all the time, it's really hard. Like, if you're being fed that your whole life, and in America, I think it's a much bigger thing to be in a small town your whole life. I think in Britain it's a lot more city orientated. Like, people go to cities to work and stuff more than stay in a village their whole life, especially the young people. So I think it's just so easy. Well, it's not just in America, the Britain's the same, but like, it's so easy if you're fed this stuff your whole life, and the education system doesn't do us any favors. But in America you have it so much worse, in that your education system is extremely politicized, where this would be a big point for you. You get taught that the earth is 10,000 years old. Do you know what I mean? Like, in Britain you don't
revisionism.
But in Britain you don't get that. But I do have some problems still. Like, for example, just after I was Marxism was about Stalin, and then forever in my head I'm going to associate Marxism with Stalinism. It's just going to be, especially as a 14-year-old learning that, I'm going to think, and I was like, communism is bad. It's bad. And I always thought that, because I've been taught, you get taught Mao and Stalin, and that's it. You don't get taught Marx 1918, or you do get taught the Soviet Union, the birth of it, or you don't get taught about like Ho Chi Minh and Fidel Castro or Che Guevara. It's more or less the worst people we can think of. Here you go. We've just taught you the definition of Marxism. Isn't it like amazing how much it doesn't work? Make sure you never, want it in this country.
We're not even taught that here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking for Mac too. I'd never heard the name Marx or Marxism or the definitions of a social economy or democracy in the workplace or the, any of it. It's actually this last 3 or 4 years that I really just started, and I'm 42. Yeah. So this was on my own, and then reading the Communist Manifesto, listening to the audiobook afterwards, just trying to, because it's a fucking boring ass book. It just is.
Exactly.
It just is. But there's so much good in it. It really took me, I am ADD, so if I put on an audio and I can do something with my hands, crochet, I can really take in that information. Yeah. And so that helps. But understanding Marxism, the newest book that just came out, everybody should get it. And that's the name of it. And then also, what was it?
That's the one by Richard Wolff and his...
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And it's so good. If it wasn't for, Richard Wolff even says he has been an educator, an economic educator, college level, his entire career. It was taboo to even mention in this country. And he talks about it all the time. But he also talks about that this is the first time, the last decade of his life, he's getting called to Tampa, Florida to do seminars. He's getting called to, Dayton, Ohio to do seminars on Marxism.
And he's on the mainstream media as well, which is interesting.
I know. He's been on Fox News recently. Yeah. Of course, it's set up so that it's fast, and every time he starts getting somewhere, they have to take a break.
Yeah.
But it's in there. Things are changing. For me, the more I learn about Marxist theory, the more I just am a Marxist. I mean, I just want democracy to penetrate every part of our society. I do want the CEO to be held accountable for making more than 8 times the amount of the lowest paid worker. For me, I like the way that Mercedes, one of the best, most expensive cars, best car I ever had was a Mercedes. That it's a good company, but when I look into their company, not here in the States, they're German companies, they are ran with a little bit of Marxist theory.
Yeah.
Everything is up on boards. People know how much everybody is making at all times. And the highest paid CEO cannot make more than a specific amount than the lowest. I love that. To me, if I worked for a corporation that cared about me that much, I would want to go to work. I would want to advance. And I think that that's what's missing. America is like the home of the free. Democracy, 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 except for when you work. When you work here in this country, it's a dictatorship. A totalitarian dictatorship. You have no rights but what is given to you. And we have a right to work states. Mac's in a right to work state. I'm in a right to work state. What is it? Labor unions. Labor unions after World War II were at 56% of the nation of big factories, not every job. But they're less than 10% of this nation right now. Less than 10%. Mac would love to have some democracy at his job about right now. Wouldn't you, Mac?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. We don't need to jump into that. But I do want to say you're absolutely right. And another thing that I'd like to point out, and I know we need to teach our kids in school, and we need to go by curriculum, at least for some cases, to teach them things and have things have a standard, right? Mm-hmm. We need that. But like the workplace, schools are run like a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And it's not really pointed out. And when it's not pointed out, and even in high school, you don't really. I feel like they should get more of a say. I feel like they should be able to practice some democracy, especially since they're not allowed to vote yet. I think they should learn what that is a little bit. They should learn that, just what democracy is, and that you are in a dictatorship in this in this school. I think it really helps that cookie cutter mentality.
Yeah,
a lot of people point out, and that we should at least start to help them break away from that if we're going to put them through that towards the end of their high school careers, because a lot of colleges let you, have debates and do more things in college. I've never been to college. I took secondaries, we called it, in a high school, but from what I know, you get more say and you get to be more involved in all the communities that are within a college. You get to learn freedom a little bit, and I just feel like kids aren't prepared for freedom. They're just told, "Hey, make sure you can vote." Once you can vote.
I think you make a really good point there, because I'm a lot younger than I think both of you. I know I'm a lot younger than Christy, but about coming out, even in Britain, for example, I always liked history and politics, and I've always really liked it, and my beliefs always sort of stayed the same, but I was so influenced by you're pretty naive when you come out of high school. So I voted Conservative the first time I could vote, But obviously the Conservatives are way different here. So, for example, the Conservative I voted for worked in Gaza to help Palestinians and treated lepers in Nigeria. So it's not like, some crazy like
here.
So it's not like some crazy thing. But I was naive in the sense that I thought I was voting for a person, not a party, and I'm obviously voting for this institution that I seriously disagree with. But because I was naive from like my conditioning at school, I thought, Labour Party's dumb. Look at the leader. It wasn't Jeremy Corbyn. It was this guy called Ed Miliband, who's he's a bit of an idiot. Not like he's dumb, but like he just really goofy. And I was like, I can't vote for that sort of party, so I'll vote for this one. But then as you go through university, like you're saying, you have a bit of freedom. You get exposed to different people, and then you talk about it in class. Because for history and politics, it's, half of it is seminars. So you basically do a reading and come to class and debate it. And sometimes it got pretty, Sometimes it got pretty fiery, because in my masters we had a Marxist professor, an Arab Marxist professor teaching U.S. foreign policy, and we had some Eastern Europeans who really hated communism, because obviously they'd lived under a communist totalitarian system. Not specifically like it's a great representation, but to them that is communism. So you're getting some proper fiery debates about like the IMF, because our professor would say the IMF is just basically an arm of the US to control the country's economies, and then this guy would argue back about like how it's good for wherever he came from. I think it was I don't know if it was like Georgia or something, like an ex-Soviet state. But like you're saying, it's interesting. But in school, I think everyone's guilty of it. You got to find your own way there. Like I can't believe how much I've changed from 23 from 20. And it sounds like weird, but that's because I got the benefit of a university education. And the good thing about this country as well, even though the loans are stupid, my debt is £40,000 now from my university. That's from 4 years at university. And if I don't make over 20 grand for 20 years, it gets written off. And I think if you can't pay it back by 20 years, it gets written off as well. So most people in the UK go to university now, most young people, because you can afford it. But in America, what is it like? At least 100 grand is that starting, and if you're a doctor it's like $500,000 or something.
I mean, as a teen myself, which I talk to many people who say they just start nodding as I say it. My mom let me know, I don't know what you want to do, but if you do want to go to college, I can't help you. So you can join the military, which my brother is a Marine, because of that, not any longer, but he was at the White House. His job was a White House guard. But nice. We were very proud. He looked very handsome every day in his dress blues.
But like you're saying, it preys on young kids. It's like come to the army and possibly get thrown into the meat grinder in the Middle East, but you might get nice healthcare and college. Yep,
exactly. And that's like I said, you start getting nodding because people are like, it's just unattainable. And if you are human, which we all are, life happens. You fall in love, you have children, and now you can't. You have to, and it's unfortunate that for me, I am very dreamy when it comes to what I think humans should have, and I accept that. I know that it is very dreamy for an American to think that if a particular citizen of America wants to be a X, Y, or Z, a veterinarian, a doctor, or a school teacher, my view is there should be no limit to the amount of education that individual wants if they're willing to put the work in, and the government should help them attain it. Because not only will they get better taxes from that person, they're going to live in a better neighborhood. They're going to have, wouldn't you want your population educated? That makes me crazy. Right.
No,
I understand why they
don't.
It took me a while to accept that. I think that a lot of coming from, I was raised by my mom who is conservative, and it's very, it's hard to look at history from a realistic view, looking in and seeing the facts when you were raised like I was, like Mac was, with this American, imperialist, there's nothing we can do wrong. Here's the history. Look, we were on the right side of all of it. And we are the good guys. So even if we do something bad, we were there for the right reasons. And so when you step back and you start looking, it's a freaking sharp pill to swallow. And so a lot of Americans go, No, you're lying. You just don't like America and push it away. And I think that's what I need to break through. That's so hard to break through.
It is. And I want to add a little bit to that because that's something that
Mac was raised conservative, or he's come so far. Like, I'm just so proud of him.
I mean, like, my high school days, like, when I was watching any news, it was Glenn Beck. So if that tells you anything. But also, like, my government teacher, she was very conservative, and I loved her to pieces. She was really cool. But looking back, one thing that drove me nuts is when, like, she tried to give us all a political, like, I forget what she called it, like, to help you figure out which side of the spectrum that you were on. And it was things like, are you pro-choice? Are you pro-life?
Right.
Are you pro basically offense or defense? It was like diplomacy or like military funding.
Yeah.
And then there was one that was just, are you pro taxes or against taxes?
Right.
Like very divisive.
Right. Black or white.
Yeah. Binary.
Do you love America or do you hate America?
Right.
Yeah.
There's only one answer you can answer and still be liked,
Yeah.
Right. And all of these are so multifaceted. But that wasn't even the direction I wanted to go, so I'm going to back up just a little bit and say what Christy was saying is what just builds this mindset, and people don't even really realize it. And when you say it to someone who is especially on the right wing or is just very mainstream and like general, they're very nationalist.
Yeah.
They, like, it just builds this nationalist mindset to where, like Christy said, we don't really do anything wrong, or if we do something wrong, well, it was the best of these two choices or whatever, right? And I have a specific name for it. It's America.
Fuck yeah.
That mindset. And it drives me nuts. And it builds every single other out. It's just it's not just the wall that we're building down in Mexico. It's literally everyone else. Whenever I talk to anyone who you can tell who listens to basically just anything associated with Fox or like Daily Wire, if you try to source your opinion, like, I'm getting this straight from the UN, they're like, whoa, no, like, you can't trust the UN because this. No. You can't trust the UN. I get that so often, and it's so sad because we are, like, if the UN says something's wrong with America, bam, America.
Yeah.
That's the answer you
they're
get.
done.
We are all right.
La. Yep.
And that's just kind of what we're taught. That's what's in the textbooks. That phrase is right when they say, whoever wins the wars, writes the textbooks.
Yep. Yeah. Winners.
That's exactly what happens here. And most of our public schools, America, really all.
Definitely.
No, sorry, you can go.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, like, in terms of the UN as well, like, in the invasion of Grenada and Panama, the UN said that's illegal. The US just did it anyway.
Yeah.
So and then like you're saying, the way America, as you're saying, like, when I did my, like, last year in history, my degree about Vietnam, and I wrote my I wrote my degree paper on it, my final paper, and then I watched the Ken Burns stuff, and I'm like, this is literally one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life in terms of what America did to Vietnam. Like, I can't believe, like, how sanitized the right wing, like Ronald Reagan calling it a noble cause, did to this conflict. Like, there was this one company in Vietnam called Tiger Company, which is a bunch of American guerrillas. They went around the country for like 6 months and said they'd killed 12,000 Viet Cong. It turned out half of them were women and children, civilians.
Yep.
And I'm just, in my head, I'm like, how was this okay at the time? Like, obviously lots of people went out and protested, but I was like, how do people think this was noble at all? It's actually we think World War I is bad, and I'm like, this is actually America trying to crush a bunch of peasants for wanting some self-determination. and using some of the worst weapons possible, dropping in more bombs in North Vietnam than were dropped in the whole World War II, which is an insane statistic to me when you think about, 6 years of some of the worst fighting of all time. And the way, I think Hitler said, the way America can commit genocide like it's no big deal is something that he thought could be, replicated in Eastern Europe to commit genocide against the Slavs. He said it's going to be like when they did genocide against the natives, they'll just take their land like Manifest Destiny. And it's a good point. Like, I don't know, we can speculate what it is, religion, capitalism, just Americans' apathy to like total like destruction of other countries is just it really, really crazy to me. And I think it's not like a specific American problem, but I think America represents the worst of it in that you can easily convince the people that are meant to be so free. You can brainwash them so easily to all go along with some of the worst shit ever. And the fact that, Vietnam was started on a lie, Iraq was started on a lie, and Iran might be started on a lie. You'd think, and I'm saying about the US Army didn't learn as well, you'd think they'd learn, but it's like, no, we're the best, we know best. You can't tell me, where I went wrong. So we'll just literally do the same thing, and we'll get the same people to support us throughout time.
Yep.
And I just, there's a lot of problems in England, especially at the moment. But I just think the education system, it's not even like I've lived through it. You're telling me firsthand what's the problems with it. But you can just see the absolute lack of critical thinking that you'd think the UN, like nearly containing all the countries in the world, set up by the US to keep peace after the war, you think that has an agenda against the US, but you don't think Fox News or these conservative-owned think tanks and everything like that, you don't think they have an agenda, but apparently the UN must have an agenda because they're saying something that doesn't agree with your patriotism, essentially, which is pretty, critical thinking. I guess not everyone develops it in high school, but skepticism of power, I think, is pretty healthy, and I don't think there's really much of it in America when it comes from your side. But it's like, Trump's in power, he must be doing everything to benefit me. Obama's in power, he must be doing everything to hurt me. It's quite crazy how effective, especially conservative brainwashing has been on, a massive chunk of America.
Well, I don't know if you've seen, there's a documentary called The Brainwashing of My Dad.
No, that sounds good, though, if it's something that
really
I talk about.
Should watch that. It's stunning. It is this woman. Her dad was always fun to be around. She has so many great memories of her dad giving money to a homeless man when she was little, calling him sir. Just a good father figure to have. She was lucky to have him. And Rush Limbaugh came right around a time where he had that part of the afternoon off. And then he would sign up to emails that were suggested to him as emails became available. So everything that was coming in would just, that bubble would get smaller and smaller. And he would never see a claim and try to refute it. He would try to go out to confirm it, which is not critical thinking. It's actually the opposite of critical thinking. Well, this documentary happened because she sent out, she wanted to raise money, a GoFundMe for this documentary, and said, this is the problem. I want to document how Fox News and Roger Ailes did all this and it to my dad. And thousands of people started writing back to her, giving her money, going to my dad, to my uncle, to my aunt, just on and on and on and on. And so the brainwashing of my dad, Brant, who is in the chat, him and I watched it, said, you have to watch it. And I watched it twice. Stacy, my girlfriend and I, we watched. It's flooring. Like, it's just, you can see they set out to move the country further to the right. That was Roger Ailes. That was his idea, was how do we do it? Well, we look at other countries and how they've nationalized, and we just do that, only better, with the TV station. And they did. I don't know. The only way that we're going to be able to help fix that, besides family members of these individual humans going into their emails and stopping emails from coming in, which is what this lady did one by one. Her dad had ended up getting sick, so she would go in and unsubscribe from a whole bunch of things, and then subscribe to Human Rights Watch and all of these actual factual news sites, and he literally changed.
That's so crazy.
Crazy. Right. I think that one, the brainwashing of my dad, really opened my mind. I already knew a lot of Roger Ailes, why he did what he did, and what the reason, how Nixon was, he loved Nixon. Nixon could do no wrong. He stood by his side even when everybody else said, nope, the evidence is in. He's like, to him, the problem was that the Americans found out. Not that Nixon did it at all, was that the Americans found out. And so how can we, the, people up here that are worthy of making choices for the nation, our decisions are supreme over you little serfs down here. So how can we, someone like Tucker Carlson, he is a trust fund baby.
Yeah.
He's never known a day of want in his life. Talks about fucking elites like he's not one of them. And people buy it. Yeah, that's frustrating. That's huge. Totally changing the subject, but it happened today that I found out, so I plan on reading much more about it. The survivors of Japanese internment camps in this country are going to the southern border and are going to protest our internment camps.
Wow.
I'm so stoked. I had tears rolling down my face with these 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds who are packing their bags to go stand outside in the Texas heat, the Mexican heat, to protest these internment camps. AOC had it right. The definition of an internment camp is to hold humans without a court date.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's definitely what we're doing.
Yeah,
So,
I was going to talk about, like, you asked me to bring a topic. I was thinking of this one because I was watching us talking about your Ken Burns documentary, watching the other one about World War II, and throughout the series it has Japanese Americans who fought in World War II. Obviously, they started World War II in prison camps in America, and it was just super interesting. A lot of them were really upset Roosevelt died. It's just got to that part, and they sort of go out and fight for Roosevelt, the guy who put them in it. So these Japanese people, Japanese Americans, it's super like. No, I feel bad for them in a way, but it's amazing that they're still patriotic, a lot of these people. And I think, I forgot what his name is a Hawaii senator who was six-term senator. He won the Medal of Honor. I forgot what his exact name is. He was in the documentary. But, the concentration camp thing, she didn't even really say the Nazis. Chuck Todd went on a rant about how she said Nazi. She didn't. But if she wants to use that comparison, I think it's fine. Because, I was reading the Nazi camps to start with, they had like a swimming pool and stuff. And they're like, look, we're giving the Jews these nice swimming pool. And then there's other concentration camps. Like, for example, coming from a British background and some of my family fought in it, the Boer War in one day South Africa. So when the British were fighting descendants of Dutch settlers, we just stuck them all into camps for ages in like awful conditions. That's a concentration camp. It doesn't have to be you have basically a factory way of killing people in it.
Not a death camp. It's a concentration camp.
In the videos, the Japanese camps, they don't actually look that bad in terms of like in a concentration camp, but they can't leave. That's the whole point of it. They're put into the middle of nowhere, and they're totally at the mercy of the guards with guns all around them, and what food they're given, and that's bad in itself.
Jobs. They lost their homes because they were just corralled and taken off. These homes went unpaid for. No one's paying their mortgage. So, of course, vultures come in and buy them up. These people lost everything and still went and fought in the war. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that as an American, I understand that because the American people they're good. They are good. And most of them would do the right thing. There is going to be a percentage of people in any country that are just like, oh, you're a waste of oxygen. Yeah. And right now we have a big 27% of diehard, sycophants right now. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the regular, person that would take off their shirt to give someone a shirt. That is most people. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I've been broke down on the side of the road, and there's always going to be a creep that stops by and, hey, are you married? But for the most part, people just want to help. And so I do understand how they saw all the good, the ideas that were good, that were worth fighting for. They're still worth fighting for. I mean, So
you do make a good point, because in the documentary, one of the soldiers, Japanese American soldiers, he said his dad walked into the train station, and these were the ones from Hawaii. So I don't think the ones from Hawaii were actually put in concentration camps. But he said to his son, and he couldn't really speak English, he's like, this country's been good to us. You've gone to college. You've had a pretty good time here. I've had my whole life's been here. Like, if you have to die for this country, like, then so be it. That's the price we're going to pay for having such a good life here. So I think, it's easy to be cynical with America, especially when you hate imperialism. And I think there is a lot. Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth to that the American dream and stuff is a lie. But I think you do make a good point. There are some examples, like these Japanese Americans, someone like Barack Obama, for all his faults, like the fact that a black kid of a single mum can become the president. That's like pretty amazing. And I guess there's only certain countries where you can come from a minority and then rise to become in charge of that country. So, for example, I think for all the hate, the US and the UK and France, these countries all have massive problems, but they're also some of the most diverse places in the world in terms of that you can be not a native and you can still have a good life there. Whereas I always say, like, we like to talk about how great Japan is or other countries like that. If you suddenly snap your fingers and gave Japan the non-white population of Britain, there would be like chaos there, because it's a homogenous population. They're pretty, generally quite racist and stuff into a lot of communities. So a lot of Asian communities. So I think, like you're saying, a lot of people can be decent, and I'm not under no illusions what the UK and the US are built on, but there's a significant amount of the population. It's not that the founding fathers, I don't think, are particularly good people. I don't think they found the country to help the average Joe. But it's not like saying the ideas they had, you can read that in a really good way and be like, if you want to be a good person and you aspire to the ideals of the founding of America, which also is the American Constitution is the basis for the UN, that is the basis for the Human Rights Declaration. So these are good ideas, but I guess there's this entrenched imperialism, entrenched capitalism, and just the elites trying to brainwash all these people to bring out the worst tendencies of America. Which, and I think, which goes to the heart of this issue, is that I made a video about how America inspired the Nazis, and the fact that America has never significantly apologized. We're talking about the reparations right now. It's never significantly apologized for these genocides, for slavery, and the fact that Donald Trump can say Andrew Jackson was his favorite president is, I think, one of the most insane things. You can say someone who led a genocidal campaign against the natives is your favorite of all time, and that's just fine, and people just accept that.
When he brought the native tribes into the Oval Office and had that picture put up, I thought, that is something that right out of the American Psycho script. It just is so evil. I don't know what other, come in to meet the new president, but let's put up the guy who made your numbers nil. Let's just do that right now. Is that the same you talked about? When I saw that, I just sat down like, wow, this is the reality of this country right now. Yeah. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, go ahead. No,
okay. Is that the same day he referred to
Elizabeth Warren
as Pocahontas the same day?
Still does.
Oh yeah,
At his rally, his recent rally, and her friend Pocahontas, and I'm just, America.
No, he was honoring the code talkers who gave their language to make sure the Nazis couldn't decipher the codes, and then he uses a racial slur to describe someone else in front of them while he's meant to be honoring them, just showing, obviously. We know how personally flawed he is, but he just has no filter. He meant to be honoring like these natives heroes who served the country when the country done so much bad stuff to them, and then you're just saying a slur in front of them. It's insane.
It was monstrous. It was an effing monstrous move, and I do think Trump is dumb. I don't think I for myself personally want my president to be smarter than me. And not just in 1 or 2 or 3. I want my president to be smarter than me on almost every thing that he needs to be smarter than me on. And I don't feel that way about Trump, and I don't think that many smart people would think that. So, that being said, I also don't think that he's dumb and didn't know that Andrew Jackson did those things. I don't think that. I know that he knows what this guy did. He's his favorite president.
No, I do think Trump is dumb, but I don't disagree that he probably knew that. Like, for example, he's so stupid in Ireland right now. So just to give a good example, he came for a tour of the United Kingdom. So he was in the Republic of Ireland, and at the moment we're having this big issue that Northern Ireland is part of the UK, so that would leave the EU with the UK. But Northern Ireland actually likes the EU, but also the Republic of Ireland is in the EU, but they have an open border. So it's part of the Good Friday Agreement, which Bill Clinton was such an instrumental part in. So, his predecessor. And then the point is there's an open border to recognise the will of the Irish people to be united one day. So they started talking about the Irish border, and he was like, yeah, they should make a big wall. And then the Irish president was like, no. It's like, yeah, if you want to kick off like the IRA coming back into Northern Ireland, you might want to talk about building a gigantic wall on the border. It's just so I think someone made a good point. What he does is he might know something about an issue, and then he'll just try and sound smart and informed. So he'll say something, he thinks border, it must be like the Mexico border with me. Let me just say, build a wall in Ireland. And then everyone's like, this is like one of the most sensitive issues like in the whole of the region. Let's not talk about building a wall. He didn't know
what the National Health Service was. He didn't know what NHS was. That's, that where he said everything's on the table, including the NHS. I do have to say, I know that everyone in UK held their breath for a second, like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? But I just want to let all of you know, he didn't fucking know what that meant.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's like he was saying, everything's on the table, to ignore the question of like, I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't explain what my policy is.
Yeah, no, that's what he's the best at. Smoozing, like in the most dirty, slimy way, he's been able to talk his way into and out of everything. It's scary. He is the perfect like comic book villain.
Yeah, I have this dream of me interviewing Trump and literally just asking him really basic questions. Like I'd be like, oh, I don't know, like not basic questions, but basic presents like a president should know. And I think it would shock people how, like, if I asked him when did World War II start, I bet he couldn't tell me, or like when was the Vietnam War or something. I bet he didn't. I bet he's so ridiculously dumb. I think because like when I think the Young Turks did a good video, he answered the debate question about nuclear weapons. Talking about nuclear, he called it nuclear, talking about his uncle who's like a nuclear scientist or something, literally rambling on, and it's clear he didn't know anything about nuclear weapons. And then I think he talked about like how amazing they were later, and he didn't know anything about them. He's like, have you seen these things? Like, he's just so, I think he's so uninterested.
Airplanes disappear.
Yeah.
They just disappear. He didn't know where, Vietnam, he goes, and it was a country on the other, nobody even knew where that was. I'm like, dude, you didn't know where that was.
I think that's the most depressing thing about Trump, though, because he's so, like, and Bush, is that, like, at least Reagan, you can understand why people fell for it, because he's a smooth talker. Trump and Bush Jr. are so dumb, it just shows you, like, how, like, I'm talking about education again, like how much it's failed that you're proud of that guy. Like, it's like with Boris Johnson at the moment, we can't really help that because it's an internal, like, Tory election, but I'm embarrassed that he's going to become the prime minister. But he went to like the top university, one of the best university in the world he went to, and I'm still embarrassed because he's a bit of like a buffoon and stuff. But Trump is literally one of the dumbest people I think who's ever held office, and he doesn't even try and hide it. And I would, even if I agreed with him on every single policy, I'd be like, this guy is just a total embarrassment. I can't support him, even if I agree with every single thing that comes out of his mouth. Just the way he says it and what he says is just ridiculous. So I can't support that. That's what I wish would happen. But clearly, like, even people like Ben Shapiro, who considers himself smart, he's like, Trump supports the policies I do, so I would like him. Like now, apparently, which is just like, You can't be a smart person and look at that and be like, I want that guy in charge of the nuclear
Facts
arsenal.
don't care about your feelings. Okay? Facts don't care about your
Apart from believing in like
Stop,
ancient
you're gonna hurt
religions
his
to
feelings.
explain the world.
You have to do this. Talk like that. You gotta talk really, really, really fast.
But that's his trick. That's his trick, though, isn't it? Just talk so fast. But when he comes up against like one of the most right-wing men in Britain in the BBC, just destroys him.
So good. That was so good. And then have you guys? I know Mac has because I have sent him like the Hong Kong protests.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So
it shows you what people can do if they organise properly.
Over
like
2 million.
Yeah, in a population of 7 million.
Right.
Do that in America. How many would that be?
I wish that people felt that way here. People are so comfortable that, if you say 2 Saturdays from now, if you care about this, we're all meeting here. I've got things. I don't know. Do you care about it? I mean, I do, but I don't know. And that's the problem.
I want to defend people on one point on that, and then also then just run it home for you after. Because we live in this capitalist society in such a way that even if we do super duper care about it, we can't. Like if the DAPL pipeline was going on next week, I can't go and help protest, or my family just suffers.
Right. You'd lose your home.
Yeah. Just can't do it. Or they starve. So on one side of things, even if they wanted help, they really can't. On the other side, and I was thinking about this earlier because I thought of it before, it's like we live in this world right now where it's a little bit similar to 1984. And it's pretty
black and white.
Yeah. But let me explain just a little bit, even though you probably get it. For the viewers, it's like it goes back to what I was saying before. We teach kids in this dictatorship fashion, and we teach them nationalism, more or less, right? There's so many schools that just kind of give students this America mentality. And then you grow out of that and you watch the mainstream news because that's what you're given. At least up to 5-10 years ago, where we didn't really have any alternatives. And you get things like 9/11, and then from that, well, where did Al Qaeda come from? Mostly Saudi Arabia, right? Right. But no, we're told no, we got to go invade Iraq.
Right.
And if you don't really pay attention much, Iraq and Iran's the same thing. Yeah. So we've always been at war with East Asia. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
So it's really sad, but it's almost inevitable, unless you get different points of view, and unless you get this other kind of education, unless you're taught philosophy in high school. I think you should be taught philosophy and logic in high school.
Yeah, and critical thinking.
Yes, critical thinking, because you'll never break out of it. You're just you really are just taught to fit this cookie cutter mold.
Yeah.
And America, and we're always at war with East Asia. They can just flip the script on you just a little bit, and you'll never fucking notice because you don't have the time to notice.
Right? No, most people don't. I'm fortunate to have time to look things up, and until I was fortunate enough to have time to look things up, I always have been a tree-hugging lefty. Always.
Yeah. Lucky for you.
Even when I wasn't raised, just always. But I wasn't informed. I still believed that we were the good guys. Exactly on what Mac is saying, the critical thinking. I'm going to, Connor, I'm going to send you a trailer if I can't find the film. It is a documentary. Arn Ra, I'm sure you know who Arn Ra is.
Yeah.
He's not in it as far as like the credits, but it's in Texas, and it is the Texas School Board. In this country, whatever Texas and California do as far as textbooks, the rest of the country follows.
Yeah.
The whole rest of the country. So every so often, 10 to 12 years, Texas has this big, huge meeting on what's going to go in their history books, in their science books, in their math. I mean, it just is the way that it is. It's called the revisionists or the revisionaries. I will find it for you. It will blow your mind, and you'll probably want to do something on it because it's so infuriating. These school board people want to add Moses to the founding fathers.
Oh, man.
and I know that's funny to you.
Yeah.
It should be. It's dead ass serious because he inspired them and that he is a real person. They want to take evolution. They know they can't take it out. So they want it to be taught side by side with the other story. There's no other story.
Yeah.
Like in science should be taught. That's it. You want to take a religion class, teach it there. It goes on and on. I mean, these people had to fight this school board. This whole documentary was made on it because if moms and dads and grandparents aren't paying attention to what is in their child's textbooks or knowing, even being aware, my kids are 21 and 24, to be aware that this happened every 10 years. I wasn't aware. I would have wanted to know what was a part of it. Like, well, what do you mean we get a chance to have a say? It's not taught here. And the people that show up to get a say in this are dentists who are young earth creationists. And because they have a PhD, the community takes them seriously. Yeah. It took me stepping out and learning critical thinking to say, well, your PhD in dentistry means you're kick-ass at dentistry. It doesn't mean anything else.
It's like, what's his name? Ben Carson.
Oh, God. Okay, if reparations happen, I think that he shouldn't get any. I think he should have to pay in. He doesn't get a black card, like, at all. He lost that. He is so ignorant. Oreos? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So dumb. So dumb.
Real quick, just 5 minutes, and then we should probably wrap up or not, Jeff.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have questions from anybody for our amazing guest? Our extraordinary atheist, Mr.
I do want to... Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I do want to give a shout out real quick to God Australian. She reached 200 subscribers at the beginning of our show tonight. So congratulations to her. If you haven't subscribed, please do so because she deserves it. She's really, really awesome. I just interviewed her on my channel.
Put the link in the chat so I can see it as well. There we go.
Very, very smart human.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and I promised her I'd give her a shout out if she wasn't at 200 yet.
Yeah, her channel's doing well. You can see in terms of the views to subscriber ratio. So happy for her.
Because she's got a hell of a noggin on those shoulders. People want to hear. That's so inspiring to me that the more someone has to offer, the more attention they're getting. And it hasn't been that way in this country for a long time. Yeah. This country, I feel like, rewards the worst. Remember, Catch Me Outside? How about that? Are you kidding me? How come I can just say those words and everyone knows what I'm saying? That's so
exactly.
sad. So sad. And then Strayan, everybody has to learn who she is, and she's smarter than that dumb little girl will ever be in her life unless she gets her shit together and realizes that her ignorance isn't cute. It's not cute. If I saw her on something, I was like, I don't want to give it a view. I don't want her to get any attention, but that's not the way things work here. Just look at Meghan McCain. I mean, she gets all the attention.
She's a spokesperson for all Jews.
Please don't mention Meghan McCain on this channel.
Yeah.
She's a trigger word for me.
She is.
We would to have you back on sometime to talk.
I definitely be up for it. It's been fun. It's been a good chat. It's nice to talk with other people rather than just myself the whole time.
Yeah, but you do that very well. I don't think a lot of people could do that. Some people would be like, oh.
I got the gift of talking non-stop for ages about anything. So.
I love it. And I love that it's rare to meet somebody that is on the same political ideas as me that is also an atheist. I love that part. I do get a lot of, but I'm not an atheist, which is fine. We can still fight for the same things.
Yeah.
You can have any beliefs that you want as long as you're voting correctly. We're good.
Yeah.
And, but it's still, in this country, atheist is not, you get looks. I have been at the doctor's going over, looking through the comments from our videos so that I could reply. And the person sitting next to me says, "Oh, is that you?" It's the channel that I'm on. He was like, "Oh, what's it called?" Ew. Why? I mean, like, just total change on their face. Ew.
Yeah.
So no God? Like, he can't even look at the content or the issues we're talking about. He cannot get past the atheist part. Like, now I'm this evil baby eater, which babies taste good. Not my fault.
I think it's interesting that like these Christians hate Muslims so much. I think they'd be good allies in terms of like making us all believe in God. But yeah, I feel bad for you guys because in Britain it's so non-religious. Everyone who's like a proper Christian is just like, there was one person I knew at uni who was a proper Christian. Everyone just thought she was a complete weirdo. Like, it's like, you tolerate it, but you don't really want to get into it because you just can't help yourself, like being like, I really don't agree with this. And we might ask her questions about it, like to really challenge her, but it's kind of like, she's a bit weird because even, I was raised, to give you the difference, I was raised Catholic. We were never taught gay marriage was wrong. We were never taught gay people were wrong. We learned about all the different faiths. We learned about contraception in school. It was really good. Like, maybe it's like a London, and it was a mixed school as well. So like, it's so different here, which I'm so happy about. But it's so sad in America. I think there's not one sitting openly atheist politician. Like, there are people who don't believe in God, but they don't describe themselves as atheists because the only people Americans hate more than Muslims are atheists. Which is shown in polls, which is crazy. Like, because they'd rather have someone who believes in something similar than, even if they hate them for it, than believe in nothing. Which is just, it's very, very depressing. So hopefully in England, I'm sure we have had atheist prime ministers, but they never said it. But I'm hoping we do get our first atheist prime minister soon. Even though I don't think Jeremy Corbyn has ever said he is, but he obviously is.
Right.
Proper
for socialist. Jeremy Corbyn. I just need to say that. I love him. I love his unapologetic leftism. It's beautiful. And they smear and smear. Here in this country, you say his name, it's followed with, but he hates Jews. Here in this country, are you kidding me? No, he doesn't. Get the hell out of here. Yeah. It's bad.
That's something we should talk about next time. The anti-Semitism stuff.
Yes. And Corbyn and atheism, and I can't wait for the next time. This was so much fun.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about identity politics with you, like the whole thing, because I was just I have that up in my feed to watch next. Your video on all the it's the word I can't think of words. All the SJWs who are popular.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my older ones. But yeah, identity politics. Yeah, we'll be interested to get into it. It's obviously, we have it here, but it's way, way different to you guys, I guess.
Yes, very.
But it's a worldwide thing right now too. So,
yeah.
But real quick, we do have a question from Topic Thunder.
Love her.
I know. I'm very glad.
Her too. She's brilliant, and she's over there by you.
She is
really?
Yeah.
She asked you, Connor, who would you like to be prime minister if you could choose?
If I could just choose a random person, I guess Jeremy Corbyn, and that's probably the most likely apart from a Conservative. In terms of like at the moment, it's literally asking me if I want to like shoot myself or hang myself. It's between the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson. So you know, like I was saying before, Boris Johnson's so embarrassing. I'd rather Jeremy Hunt, but still, he's like backing all this Iran shit and stuff. Like I can't stand any of them, to be honest. So
it's Trump and Hillary, is what you're saying?
It's more like if I had to pick between like Bob Dole and George Bush Senior or something, like this. But yeah, it's annoying. So hopefully, you know, our country's such a mess at the moment. You don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully, the chaos is a path for Corbyn to get in, because he didn't really have a chance a couple of years ago. But now they're saying he would probably win a general election. So here's hoping, you know, Brexit messes things up, because what happens with the Tommy Robinson stuff, Nigel Farage, Carl Benjamin, is that the Tories are so scared that Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party are going to take all their votes away, and if they eat each other, I'm happy with that. And you know, but the left is so divided. It's just like the Democrats in America. It's so divided. People hate Corbyn in the Labour Party, like the centrists, Blairites, and there's a lot of parallels with American and UK politics. But obviously, everything you have is so much worse than what we have. Like you're operating at like a different level of crazy than we are. Like
we have people not even showing up after being subpoenaed, just going, no, doesn't matter, and nobody's doing anything about it. They're just like, oh shit, he didn't show. Like, are you kidding me? If I didn't show up after being subpoenaed, I'd be in prison. Let's keep it real.
No question.
No question. Right. Any more questions, Mr. Mac, Daddy?
Atheist Joke Boy asked how it feels to be worse being a Brit. How's it feel to be worse than America? But we don't have time to answer that question, because I promised
Naja
that we could get going.
Yeah, he has a thing to get to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So
quick answer. I'm more happy to be British than American. So.
Well,
and I'm more happy to be Irish than English, so it goes many ways.
Fair enough. All right, everyone for watching tonight. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next Friday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I think that's about all. So, Christy, close us out. Let's get out of here.
Stay humanist, for God's sake.
Good night.